Hello, and welcome to an intro to Anthro with two humans. I'm human number one, John McCray.
And I'm human number two, John Lehr.
And this is the podcast where we reassess what it means to be human. And the title of this episode is, Oh Yes, I Remember It Well, I Think. The Marvelous Mystery of Memory.
Memory! Oh, I'm so glad you're doing this. I need this one.
I think we all need this one.
Yeah, I need it.
So obviously today, John, we're going to be talking about memory, what happens when we remember something, what happens when we forget something.
Yes.
And what we can do to help us remember things.
I'm sorry, what was the first thing again? Ow! Yeah.
I'm surprised you waited so long to do that one.
It's never going to get old.
And obviously, the title of the show is a reference to the song I Remember It Well from the musical Gigi, the 1958 musical film Gigi. And in the song, Maurice Chevalier is an older man, and he meets a former lover played by Hermione Gingold.
Jesus.
Who is an older woman.
Uh-huh.
And they meet many years later, and Maurice Chevalier tries to impress her by remembering the details of their first date. Oh. And of course, everything he supposedly remembers is completely wrong. So when she corrects him, he says, I remember it well. So,
I must confess, I've never seen Gigi.
Really?
I have not. Have you seen it?
I've seen it, but it's French. It takes place in Paris. And I think it's Camille Claudette. I can't remember. It's based on a novella that came out in the 40s, and then in 1958 they made it into a musical film. But the thing is, so he will sing things like we met at 8, or we met at 9, and she responds, we met at 8. I was on time. No, you were late. And then he'll say,
well.
Oh, yes, I remember it well. So it goes on like that. Have you ever forgotten anything in a relationship that...
Oh, my God, yes. It's amazing that this brain works at all. You're very sharp. You're very... You remember things. You're good at it. I am not. And you know who is really good at remembering is Carlos. He's one of our friends, and he's a listener.
Yeah.
And he can remember everything. It's amazing. It's just amazing. And sort of scary.
Yeah, my wife is kind of the same way too. My wife is like Hermione Gingold. Like she will remember things about when we first started dating, almost like she was wearing a wire or something at the time. And then she will, like, if I'll say something, she'll ask me about like something we did when we first started dating, and I'll say something and she'll be like, no. That's not what we did. She'll go to the transcript almost, you know.
Oh my God.
So
that's rough. That's rough. So you're getting pop quizzes from time to time. Is that right?
I know. Wow. I'm just kind of like, well, you know what it was like. You know.
Mm-hmm. She's like, no, tell me what it was like. Was it blue or was it green?
But yeah, oh yes, I remember it well. You know,
it's like, well, she's a poet, so she's very specific, observant. Right. You know what I mean? I feel like that makes sense. You know,
right? I'm a comedy writer. I just go for broad strokes.
Yeah, you don't even know where you are. You're just making the funny.
So to give you a little background of where this episode comes from, a few weeks ago. My wife, Mary, and I drove out to Joshua Tree in California to spend the weekend with my cousin and her husband, my other cousin and her wife, and my cousin's son, who I guess is my first cousin once removed.
Wait, who is the cousin again? He's from what? It's your sister's... Wait, Who is it? Give me that again.
So it's my mom's brother. It was my mom's brother's... daughter.
Okay, and that's your husband. Cousin.
Right. Yeah. My mom's sister's daughter and her wife. And then my mom's brother's daughter's son. So it was like
Okay.
my second, or not, he's not my second cousin. He's my first cousin once removed.
Well,
I
what's
think
a second cousin then?
I had to look it up because my family always they would have called him as my second cousin. But a
Yeah,
second cousin,
yeah.
apparently, you share great grandparents.
Oh, Jesus. Who
And so,
tracks that?
I know. So he and I don't share great grandparents.
Okay.
So he's my first cousin once removed.
Once removed.
But in our
Got it.
family, we would have called him my second cousin.
Yeah, same here.
It's my cousin.
I come from a big family on my dad's side. Yeah, we would have called him a second cousin, but it's first cousin once removed. Interesting. Okay.
I guess. I don't know. Maybe in Kansas we called them, because your family's from Kansas too. Maybe we called them all second cousins at that point.
Well, we slept with them. I know that much.
Yeah, they were far enough away. But anyway, it was a wonderful time. My cousin, it was for her birthday. She had rented a house and there was a pool. And so we did hikes and then
What was your first cousin once removed doing?
He was hanging out too. He was having a good time.
Nice. So he didn't feel isolated because he's removed. He felt a part of. He did.
He did. And he's very fascinating. And he's actually the reason why I bring him up is because he's the one that brought up this topic for today's show.
Is he a listener, or it just came to, he just was like, hey, I know about your show and this would be a good topic?
No, it wasn't even that. It's the older cousins were trying to remember something that had happened when we were younger. And people and events.
Yeah.
And, one thing that he does is and we were having trouble with it. You know what I mean? We've kind of reached that point where a lot of our conversations are like, it was the guy who lived in that place who was kind of, and they did the thing.
Yeah.
A lot of talking and very little information, actually.
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of wear and tear on the first cousins. Maybe the once removed is clear, but
yeah. But anyway, he works in a young guy, late 20s, maybe early 30s. Very interesting. He works in production in virtual reality in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And so I think it's because, for one thing, I realized when you talk to somebody in virtual reality, you kind of have to ask yourself, like, do you really have a cool office you go into every...
And also, are we in a simulation right now?
Yeah. Am I
one of your creations?
But anyway, because I think he's into virtual reality, he's really into how things work. Okay.
Got it.
What makes reality? So anyway, we were all trying to remember something, and he said, I read a book recently about a journalist who was following the United States Memory Championships.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And he said in the book, the journalist talked about these different techniques you can do to remember something.
Right.
And then he said the journalist went back the next year and actually won the United States Memory Championship.
Oh my God. So he taught himself how to do it and then it worked.
Right.
That's
he won
so
the championship.
Fascinating. That's so interesting.
Yeah. And so anyway, first of all, I was like, I'm already into competitive eating. So when he started talking about competitive memorizing, I was like, it wasn't that much of a leap for me to get over there.
Right. What do they memorize? Like pi out to 100,000?
Yeah. Some of it, or random deck of cards is one of the things they have to memorize.
Jesus.
They like shuffle cards and then you have to do it.
That makes me sick to my stomach.
I know. And then they'll memorize like a poem, a brand new poem or like a piece of text is another thing they have to do. And then they do like pi, like random numbers, just a series of numbers that they'll have to do.
Wow.
So anyway, I asked him, as I'm listening to him talk about it, I'm like, we got to do an episode on this.
Yes.
We got to do an episode.
Yes. So he inspired this episode. Got it. Okay.
And so anyway, when I got home, first of all, I had him tell me what the name of it was, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it. And then when I got home, I ordered it, and it's called Moonwalking with Einstein. The Art and Science of Remembering Everything by Joshua Foer.
Whoa.
And it came out in 2012. So the book's been out a while, and
Wow.
it was a bestseller. And when I went on just doing some research on it, he's done like TED Talks and everything about memory since
Memory. Yeah. He's made it a cottage industry.
then.
That's what you do now. You
Is
create
it?
some IP, i.e. a book, and then you speak and you write articles and you
Yeah.
blog. That's what you do now.
Is that what we're doing? Is that our goal? Is that
No,
what we're...
no, we're not going about it right. We have no IP.
What's the IP again? What's it?
Well, intellectual property. You need something that's been published that makes you, that vets you, so that you're now, you know, an expert.
Right.
Then you go around speaking and making money.
Oh, no. That's not going to happen with us.
No,
that's
no.
Not.
We can barely put our pants on.
So wait. I've spent the last 6 weeks like going down the rabbit hole of memory. I've been reading everything I can get my hands on about memory because it was so fascinating.
This is great.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about today is
Fantastic.
memory.
Excellent.
Wait,
what is the topic again?
That's number two.
There we go. Yes.
All right. There'll be plenty more of that. So how
many more of what? I forgot.
How is your memory, John? How are you doing? How are you holding all the marbles together?
Not great. Not great.
Really?
No, I just do whatever my phone tells me to do. That's what I do. I put everything in there, and then whatever it says for me to do, I do it. Yeah. Whether I'm driving, appointments, phone calls, people's names, it's all in there.
Really?
I cannot wait for the chip. I've talked about this multiple times on this podcast, but I just can't wait for the chip.
Do you think about those things before? Like, do you ever like, oh, tomorrow I have, or do you check it beforehand, or you just wait right until the moment when you have?
Oh no, I'll check it. I'll do it. Like, what am I doing today? And then I'll look at it. Oh, okay.
What are some of the things that you find that are there things that you find that you're forgetting? Certain things are slipping. Slipping.
I don't know names, but see, here's the thing. As we've talked about, I abused a lot of drugs and alcohol in the 90s. Right. So there's always, I run into people who know me from the 90s and I don't know them at all. I have no recollection, face, name, nothing.
Yeah. What do you do when that happens? Do you try to play it off?
You know, yeah, it's so good. Hey, have you met my wife? Introduce, you know. And that's how everyone knows that you didn't know who they were.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you ever forget a line in a show?
Oh my God, yes. Yes. I just, well, let's see. I guess it was last year I did a 2-person play.
Yeah.
And it was a 90-minute play. And it was just 2 people. So I had to memorize a ton. And the other guy in the play wrote it. So he knew there were times, and I had to mention this to him, where he was mouthing my lines as I was saying it.
Were you both on stage? Too,
on stage, yeah. He didn't know it because he knew him so well. It was just a tick, you know. I'd be like, dude, listen, you're mouthing my line. It's freaking me out.
It's a whole different subtext at that point.
He's an incredible writer, you know, and so, but he wrote it. It was all his, you know. So yeah.
I always loved in Jesse. You played a character that didn't speak.
I didn't speak. Oh, and then they finally gave me a line after a year of not speaking and making tons of money, and the line was super technical. It was like super technical, and I blew the line. I blew it. It was so humiliating. After a year of just raking in cash while everybody else had to work. Oh, it was humiliating.
That's what maybe some other people in the cast complained, like, you know, that guy, he doesn't have to learn any line. Look at him over there just smoking cigarettes or whatever.
Yep. I was just enjoying. God, it was nice. I just played video games in my trailer.
Yeah.
That was when GoldenEye came out.
Oh,
007
nice.
GoldenEye, the video game. Oh,
Yeah.
God, I loved it. I played that thing. Got paid thousands and thousands of dollars to play a video game. It was fantastic.
Have you ever called someone the wrong name? Have you ever called somebody?
Yes. Yes. And even worse, it'll get stuck and I'll continue to call them the wrong name.
No. Oh no.
Oh, it's so bad. Somehow it gets stuck in there and then I can just call them that. I can only call them that.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're always very hard on people who call others by the wrong name.
Yes, it's a form of disrespect.
Well, in the article, why do we forget our family members and close friends' names? Fiona Comfort and Stephanie Wong say that the ability to recognize someone and call them by their correct name is incredibly complex.
Oh, God, where's Stephanie when I need her?
I know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like go a little bit easier on yourself.
I already forgot her co-writer, but Stephanie Comfort, I need her in my life. Explain
Fiona Comfort and Stephanie Wong.
Stephanie Wong.
And they say
I gotta come up with a mnemonic device to remember that name now.
Right.
Wong.
Exactly.
Like a long memory. Wong. Okay, got it.
And they say calling a person by their correct name requires integration of information across both hemispheres of the brain to connect face and name knowledge in mere milliseconds.
Wow. Damn.
But what's important for today's discussion about memory, Comfort and Wong say that looking at the way people misname other people gives us insights into the way our memories for names are organized in the brain.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
And they went in this article, they discuss a research project that was done by researchers at Duke University. And what the researchers found is misnaming is a common cognitive slip-up that seems to occur most frequently between family members and close friends.
What?
Yeah.
It does?
Right.
Okay.
And so,
you mean like a Freudian slip kind of thing where you say... I don't know.
Let me go on and I'll tell you what they found.
I'm jumping ahead. I'm your best student. I'm always jumping ahead. I've read the next chapter.
Calm down.
Ooh, pick me, Mr. Cotter. Mr. Cotter.
So what the researchers did is they looked at 1,700 participants and they found that regardless of age, those who had been misnamed reported being misnamed by someone they knew well.
Wow.
Okay.
That's
likewise,
weird.
Those who had misnamed someone reported doing so to a familiar person.
And so therein is the problem. Right. One thinks they're more intimate than the other.
No, I don't know about that. I don't know if that is the problem.
One thinks, oh, we're so close, he should know my name. And the other is like, hey, I know a lot of people like you, okay?
Well, that's one way to look at it. I guess you could look at it that way.
Well, I didn't go to Duke, okay?
What Comfort and Wong say that misnaming usually occurs within the same semantic group. And by semantic, we mean that semantics is the meaning of words, okay, in the language. Okay. And so what that means is family members are misnamed with another family member's name. And friends are misnamed with another friend's name. Oh. So what that means is the other way that people do it, sometimes if there's phonetic similarities, if the names sound alike for some reason.
Right.
So what's happening, Comfort and Wong say, is that the brain tends to group names that are related. Right. So they're looking at, for family members, somehow your brain is taking all the names it knows for family members and putting it in the same location in your brain. It's trying to group them together.
Okay.
And then also the ones that sound alike. So your brain is also trying to figure out a way to keep track of all this information that it has about names.
How does it do it? My God.
I know.
And it's also petty. You know, we're all worried about our phones getting unlocked or whatever. And like, what do we got in there? It's like crap. My Social Security. You know, that's like 0.001% of the population.
There's so much information for people to
We're so mundane and boring and like it's just so like, okay. Somebody's gonna see my pictures.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, oh god, there's so many pictures that they have to look at. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the brain's doing, though. The brain is kind
Yeah.
of like a computer. The brain is trying to lump all of this information together
Oh
in a
God.
way that it can be accessed quickly.
That's
So,
incredible.
so that's why it's trying to maximize efficiency, is what Comfort and Wong say.
Hmm.
And so when your brain quickly goes in there and tries to find a name of someone, a family member or a friend,
Got it.
sometimes it will pull up in its effort to be efficient, it will pull up the wrong name. And you will say the wrong name because it's similar to what the name that you're trying to find.
I see. Well, that's bull. I mean, your brain fucked up. It did not do its job.
Well,
Just because it's close,
yeah,
just because there's a semantic similarity,
right.
that doesn't count.
Well, the situation that they talk about that this usually happens is with children. Like when your parent would say like John, Steve, David. You know what I mean? Or
Yes,
like they're trying to think
yes,
of a name
and
for their
yes,
kids.
yes, and you end up. That's true. I've done that. I've done
Yeah.
that.
And everybody always thinks about, well, maybe mom likes him best, or I don't look like David or whatever, but it's
Well,
not
that's
really
probably
happening.
true. It's stuck in there for some reason.
Yeah.
It was prioritized for some reason.
Well, I think what's happening is your parent has all the names stuck in like children's names.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's a category somewhere, a file in the brain for children's names.
But within that category, there's a subcategory of your favorite. And that's why it spits out in that order.
Yeah, why else would it do that? I remember one time when I first started dating my first wife.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
And we had gone home to her family. It was the first time I was meeting her family.
No, Jesus.
And her family, they really worked each other's nerves because they were all super intelligent. 4 daughters, father who was a recovered alcoholic.
Oh boy.
Mom who was a devout Irish Catholic.
Okay.
And then there was like a grandma, just this really stern farm woman.
Oh my God. Jesus. And you. And then we throw you in.
And I had the long hair at the time. So
Oh,
it was
boy.
very stressful. It was always stressful going there. But I remember we were sitting around dinner one time, and they were all just going at it about something. And she was getting worked up, as we do when we go to our,
Yeah.
where we spend a lot of time around our family.
Right.
And at some point in the midst of all of that confusion and anxiety, she called me the wrong name. She called me her old boyfriend's name.
Oh my God.
So
You should have known. You should have known right then.
No, well, the whole family kind of got quiet because and you could tell like they were really enjoying this. Like, oh, here, we're going to see this. Even the old grandma, I could tell, was kind of anticipating something,
They love that.
Right. And I didn't lose it. And this is why, first of all, if you're willing to have sex with me, I don't care what you call me.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah.
In fact, you don't have to call me anything at all. You could just say, hey, you come over here. You know what I mean?
You can call me shit for brains and I'll,
Right. But also, I could tell that they had worked her up. Her up. And her mind was kind of discombobulated throughout all this anxiety. And she was really trying to refer to me, but it was in that moment of anxiety and stress, the wrong name had come out. And the guy's name was similar. Like his name was Tom. My name was John.
Who cares?
It was similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're thinking of other people while you're having sex with her, and she's saying other names while she's talking to you. Everybody.
Right. And also, so I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of being upset about it. I think I made a joke about it or whatever. But yeah, it's like I'm not giving old granny the
good work.
So what exactly does memory do for us? And in the essay Memory and Cognition, John Sutton, Celia Harris, and Amanda Barnier say that according to cognitive psychologists, human memory has three major tasks to perform. First, it must receive incoming information, a process called encoding. This is kind of similar to computers, if you see the similarity. Then it must retain the information over time in a way that's called storage, like a computer. And finally, it must be able to access information at some future time, a process called retrieval. And what Sutton, Harris, and Barnier say is that we don't just encode, store, and retrieve whatever information we encounter. Rather, each of these processes is performed selectively.
What does that mean? I don't understand.
It's because there's so much information that we encounter throughout the day.
Right.
We can't possibly, some people used to think
Some people do. In fact, I have a friend who's a super recognizer. Remember, I want to have her on. We got to have her on as a guest because she remembers every face she's ever seen. Can you imagine that?
Right. Yeah, that one we need to talk to her about.
We got to get her on. Okay, I'll work on
But the problem is, there's so much information. Like if you said, people used to think that, well, you see everything in the background, everything's really in there, it's being encoded. We just don't have the storage space for that.
Yeah, right. We'd have to put it in our ass. We'd have to put that storage space somewhere else.
Right. Hang on a second.
Some of those memories...
we met. Hang on a second. Let me go to the bathroom. I'll be back.
Some of our memories we'd have to store right in the old ass.
Like a external hard drive. An external hard drive now.
You got a jack? I got it. It's backed up. Good night, everybody.
David Linden in the book The Accidental Brain says, we need a signal to say, this is an important memory. Write this down and underline it. And he says that signal that we get is emotion. So if you feel an emotion, whatever emotion you're feeling about something that's happening, that's kind of a signal to your brain that you should remember this.
Yeah. People say smell brings out memories.
Right. Like and we talked about that in our smeller because it goes right into the amygdala. Right into the brain. It's like a direct...
You get something into the amygdala and it ain't coming out. You know what I mean? That's in there.
Right.
You got to shove an ice pick up your nose to get rid of it.
But that's a way of us trying to selectively weed out some of the things that we don't need to know. Like when we're driving in a car, we don't remember every single thing that we see.
Jesus,
and why should we? Why should we?
Yeah. Thank God.
And some of the reasons we need memory, Sutton, Harris, and Barnier say, is that memory helps us maintain our sense of self. And it also helps us promote and maintain relationships with others.
I think, therefore I am. Or I remember, therefore I am.
Right. and Joshua Foer says, our memories are always with us, shaping and being shaped by the information flowing through our senses in a continuous feedback loop. Everything we see, hear, and smell is inflected by all the things we've seen, heard, and smelled in the past. So the memory is actually helping us interpret what we're seeing now, whether it's important, making sense of whether it's important or not important now is based on our memories.
Yeah.
And he says, without the ability to compare today's feelings to yesterday's, one cannot tell any cohesive narrative about oneself or about those around us, which makes one incapable of providing even the most basic psychological sustenance to one's family and friends.
Yeah, what was that Harrison Ford movie where the replicants and he has to kill them?
It's Blade Runner.
Blade Runner. God, see, I forgot it. Anyway, all of the replicants, the robots, had photos of their family so that they had memory to attach to it so that they could be sentient and be aware of themselves.
And I think that's what they're talking about is our memories is what allows us to connect with people. With you and I have our memories of a friendship, our cousins, like we were talking about cousins, our siblings. Uh,
I
and
can't
Foer
remember
says
anything you and I did. I can't remember one goddamn thing. I only have like 3 memories of us in high school. I swear.
Really? Oh,
I don't know how.
Oh, no.
I think I've had a lobotomy along the way or something.
Somebody didn't tell you. Maybe you were abducted.
Yeah.
But you see that with when someone has Alzheimer's, for example. It's very hard for the person who's still in the relationship who doesn't have Alzheimer's to maintain that relationship, because it's the shared memories are what connects us to people.
Yeah.
And when that other person is just in an internal present, or they only remember something 70 years ago.
They can't even remember your name or that you're married to them. And oh my God, my mom went through that. It's just horrid.
I know.
It's harder on the person who doesn't have Alzheimer's.
Right. Usually the person that has Alzheimer's, they seem pretty happy.
Yeah, they're oblivious. I mean? They're kind of a pain early on because they're frustrated, of course, by not remembering things. And that makes them kind of angry and frustrated and pissy. At least that was my experience. But then, as it sets in, they're kind of like fine. They're just in the moment.
But then it's so hard for the person who's there, who was in a relationship with this person, who loved this person. Yeah. It's hard for them to maintain. And I think that's what they're talking about with this, is that we need those memories to be able to share those memories for us to maintain a connection with each other.
It's so sad. So sad.
Yeah. And Foer also...
don't worry, I'm going to hang out with you.
Oh, no, I can't wait. I can't
remember anything anyway. So we'll just sit there and talk about whatever's right.
Just smile and
we'll just roll one die. And go, a 6.
Yeah, look at that. Wow, what was it last time?
Here's a 3.
The other thing we do is we use our memories. We remember events by placing them in in position. What Foer says is that we place them in sequential order, and relative to other events, and that's kind of how we remember things. So when you lose that ability too, your sense of time becomes all distorted. So, for example, people who are in solitary confinement, for example, may think that they've only been in there for, 6 months, and then they find out you've actually been in there for 2 years or something like that. And the other thing, he says that creating new memories helps us stretch out time. So, because then you have something to compare your experiences to. You're still setting up a sequential order to them.
Yes.
So one of the reasons why when we get older, it feels like time is flying by is that we're not creating as many new experiences as we used to. So we have nothing to compare it to. So suddenly it's like, oh my God.
We're not doing enough cool stuff. Right? Like we're not doing enough memorable stuff.
Right.
That's interesting. All right. Screw it. I'm jumping out of a plane. I'm going to do it.
Well, that's what he's saying. In order to this mental time in our lives, in order for us to make it seem like life is going slower,
right?
What we need to do is we need to keep doing memorable things.
All right.
Essentially.
All right. I'm going to Thailand.
Don't get arrested. It might backfire on you. It's like, well,
that'll be a memory. That doesn't. It'll be a memory.
25 years of his life, he was in solitary confinement in Thailand.
But it was super memorable up until then.
All right, so what is memory? Foer says the brain has around 100 billion neurons.
Jesus.
Which can make upwards of 5,000 to 10,000 synaptic connections with other neurons.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's just too many. I don't
just
want
need
that
a couple.
Many.
You just need a couple.
Oh, God.
So in other words, a memory, he says, at the most fundamental physiological level is a pattern of connections between those neurons.
It always boils down to electrical impulses and connections.
Right. Exactly.
Isn't that crazy? That is just the craziest thing to me.
Yeah. And so what he says is every sensation that we remember, every thought that we think transforms our brain by altering the connections within that vast network.
So what?
By the time you get to the end of this sentence, your brain will have physically changed.
Wow.
So the wiring, just
Yeah.
listening to what we're doing and making connections to former
Yeah.
memories and all this stuff.
Neuron elasticity, I think they call it.
Is
So,
it? Is it?
you can undo things too.
Yeah.
It's not just adding. You can rearrange and undo, like changing an
Yeah.
opinion or a point of view, or
Well,
so
I
you
think
were an
that's when they
atheist
talk
and now you
about
believe.
just positive thinking. Positive. It really
Right.
does change the wiring in your brain.
No question. No
Yeah.
question. Yeah. God.
And he says, therefore, the nonlinear associative nature of our brains makes it impossible for us to consciously search our memories in an orderly way.
Right. Because
And
it's all
that's why-
organic. It's all over the place.
Right. Right. It's all just these connections being made and kind of
Ugh.
jumping over other connections.
Oh.
And that's why.
I'm
That's why
exhausted thinking about it. I have a headache.
Right.
All
right.
for what? To remember the girl that I was, had a crush on in 3rd grade? It ain't worth it.
Yeah, when you bump into them or something, you're searching all those memories trying to.
See, this is why I like the chip, because the chip is going to help me access all of that. I'll know everybody's name. Everybody's name will come up on my heads-up display on my eyeball.
Do you? What are you going to do with all that information, though? That's what I want to know. Do you if you knew everybody? If everybody did, I'm like, there's some things you want to forget.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Well, you could do it. You go into preferences in your chip, and you delete stuff.
What was the movie with Jim Carrey? The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, or great movie. But that was kind of the idea. Remember that you could go in and erase those memories out of. But anyway, it's because of that nonlinear nature of our brain neurons that why your memories don't just come up orderly. You'll be thinking of something else, and then a memory will come up of something entirely unrelated or maybe similar to that thing. And
it's like a 3-dimensional spider web.
Yeah,
where everything is interconnected in all ways.
Right.
Jesus.
But we do there's different types of memories that we have. So we have working memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. And in the book, The Accidental Mind, David Linden says that our record of a particular experience moves from working memory through short-term memory into long-term memory. And in the article, Human Memory, The Basics, Michael Martinez says long-term memory is relatively durable, whereas short-term memory is temporary.
Yeah, boy, ain't that the truth. I can't remember how to sign into my Instagram if my life depended on it.
I know. So he says, to give you an idea of your short-term memory, just think about what you're thinking about right now. Mm-hmm. And that's basically the extent of your short-term memory.
Well, wait a minute. In that moment that you said that, I wasn't thinking about anything.
I know. So there was nothing
I
in
can
there.
remember that. I'll remember nothing.
And another thing Martinez says, our short-term memory, the capacity for a or the storage for it, it's like our RAM, basically, to use another computer.
Right. Yeah.
It's really small. And Foer says that in 1956, there was a Harvard doctor or psychologist who found out that we can only think about 7 things at a time. That's the limit to what
I'm sorry, you lost me. I wasn't paying attention. I was thinking about my dry cleaning, the fact that I got to get my taxes in. Yeah, right. I believe that. I think mine's lower than the 7.
Yeah, well, they say 7.
I don't think 7 things at once. I don't think I do that.
They usually do the 7 plus or minus. You know what I mean? So maybe you're down a little bit lower than that.
I think I'm bringing the people who think 10 things at a time down. I'm bringing the average down because I'm like 0 or 1 or -1.
But they say that the reason why we have that short-term memory, again, is to provide a filter between the outside world and our long-term memory. Because, again, if we filled up our long-term memory with everything we see, we'd have no storage left. Or it'd be all irrelevant. We'd be remembering stuff that makes no difference in our lives.
Right. We'd have to be pulling those memories out of our ass, as we discussed earlier.
Right. The other thing about long-term memory is it has a large capacity, but it's not very accurate. And what they say is long-term memory, it's distortive. So you may remember things, keep these long-term memories, but they're not really precisely what happened. So your short-term memory is very precise and accurate. Your long-term memory can contain a lot,
Yeah.
but it's
that's the trouble with these, long-term memories of certain traumatic events. Sometimes they're more traumatic than you remember, and sometimes they're less traumatic than you remember.
Right.
And that's that therein is the rub.
Yeah, and it's, if you think about things from, even pleasurable events that you had in your life, when you try to think back of something that happened 25, 30 years ago, or even to pull it out of your long-term memory.
Job, I think.
You don't need a voice. You don't need a voice that what that was. Just kind of hold it in your own.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
But it's the details. I mean, there's some details there, but it's not like a video, or maybe you do have a video.
No. Well, no, not that I know of. Yes,
but you know what I mean. It's like you miss those. You miss those details are kind of honed off just to allow space for them to be saved in your long-term memory.
Makes sense.
So you have it there, but it's just not as defined as something that just happened.
Right.
And again, it's kind of like Maurice Chevalier in the in the
he
film.
Remembers it well,
right?
But he doesn't remember the details well,
right?
But he remembers it,
right? Exactly. And then another thing that happens, Foer says there's something called the curve of forgetting. And what he says is that for normal humans, memories gradually decay with time. From the moment you grasp a new piece of information, your memory's hold on it begins to slowly loosen until finally it lets go altogether.
Whoa.
And they've measured this curve of forgetting, and Foer says in the first hour after learning a set of nonsense syllables, more than half of them would be forgotten. After the first day, another 10% would disappear. After a month, another 14%. After that, the memories that were left will have more or less stabilized, and they will have become consolidated in long-term memory. So
but they're stupid random numbers. Who gives a shit? I mean, isn't that part of it? It's not important to me, so why would I remember it?
Right. But it's the same thing, though, when you learn something, if you have to rehearse that or keep it fresh in your mind.
Yes, I know that. Boy, when I did that play, I had to run that damn thing all the time.
But that's the thing. You may learn it, and it will be there in your short-term memory, like right when you do. But you have to somehow get it to consolidate back in your long-term memory. And that's
if
really
I had
what,
to do that play tonight, I couldn't do it. I could not do it.
Yeah.
I could not. I mean, I'd pull out a couple of things, maybe.
Right. Because, and that's what you have to, that's what they say, you have to figure out ways to keep that, be able to access that from your long-term memory.
So all the fun stuff we did together as teenagers, I should have constantly gone through it at night.
I think we did more than 3 things. I don't know.
I don't remember.
Maybe it was only 3 things. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll have to go back.
You remember more than 3 things? Let's talk about them sometime. I'd love to remember that stuff.
Okay. We'll try to
That'd
bring
be
it
a delightful night. I'd love that.
At this point, I could just make it up. Who knows what?
That's true. That's true. You absolutely.
You find out
could.
later. It was like I did like a Charles Dickens yearly. I was just reminding you of things that like Great Expectations. Remember when you
use chat GBT with high school memories.
All right. So what are the parts of the brain that are responsible for our memory? And again, this was kind of interesting. In The Accidental Mind, David Linden says that the brain is not elegantly designed by any means. It is a cobbled together mess, which amazingly and in spite of its shortcomings, manages to perform a number of very impressive functions.
Okay, Linden. I don't know.
Well, he's making the point of, everybody always thinks, oh, the brain it's such a beautiful machine.
Right.
And what he's saying, it's like, well, yeah, it performs a number of like amazing
Yes.
functions,
Yes.
but as far as being like perfectly designed, it's just been cobbled together over millions of
Millennia.
years of
Yes.
evolution. Yeah.
Yes. And that's not going to be, precise and clean as it's, things get added on, things get taken away,
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
that's what he I like how he says the particular texture of our feelings, perceptions, and actions is derived in large part from the fact that the brain is not an optimized generic problem-solving machine. So in other
Hmm.
words, it's all these things that we always talk about, like why is my brain so weird, or
Right.
why do our brains do that? It's because
Right.
it wasn't one big plan. This is like, a IT problem at your office or something where they just keep throwing on new programs and fixes and
Yep.
patches.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but anyway, one thing we do know is that our memory has a lot to do with the medial temporal lobe system.
Oh boy.
And in Remembering Larry Squire, the article titled Remembering Larry Squire and John Wigstead talk about like our medial temporal lobes are on both sides of our brains or both
Okay.
sides of our head. Okay.
Towards the front or towards the back?
Well, it's the temporal. So it's like right up
Oh.
near your temples going back to where
Oh.
your ears are, right in
Oh
that area.
God. I wish they could rub themselves. I love having my temples rubbed. Don't
Really?
you?
Maybe yeah,
Oh.
I do. I do.
Oh God, it's so relaxing.
I like the thing with the masseuse also will or masseur will also like kind of go inside your eye cavities, kind of like poke in
What?
there.
I don't
Yeah.
think that's what are they putting in your eye cavity? Oh, I know what you mean. Yes,
Yeah.
like your eye socket. Yeah, I
Right,
gotcha.
right. Like
Right,
poke
right,
in there
right.
and kind of get
Yeah,
something
that feels
going.
good. It all feels good.
It
Being
does.
rubbed by somebody else feels good.
Yeah, it does. And the specific parts of the brain that are found in the medial temporal lobe are the amygdala, which we've talked about before,
See, yeah, that's serious.
the hippocampus,
Oh boy.
and the hippocampal gyrus, which are
Oh,
like
I've
some
never
other.
heard that one.
Yeah, there's some other parts of the like related to the hippocampus that are part of the hippocampus gyrus.
Hmm.
Um,
Sounds like some scientists reaching for explanations.
yeah, give me that
Yeah,
dictionary.
and it's some over there too. We'll call it the hippocampo-gyrus.
They say that the hippocampus is named after a seahorse because it was supposed to look like. And I looked at that thing all for the last
Doesn't.
month and a half, and I can't see a
No.
seahorse in it.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. The
Um,
only way for us to be sure is to get a cadaver and cut it open and look in there.
no. Once we get our grant, once we get our IP, then we can. They'll let us do that.
Whichever one of us dies first, the other one is allowed to go in and drill in there and get the hippocampus and look at it and see if it looks like a seahorse.
That sounds fantastic. I'm going to dedicate my body to you personally. They'll show you. You'll like. There'll be a doorbell will ring, and you'll open it up, and
I'd
there'll be
love that. I'd have you stuffed and put you sitting down next to me.
Oh, I love it.
Reading a book.
Yeah,
he's always reading a book.
that's the way he wanted. Who's it?
I could put wigs on you and make you different ages. Like when you were young and had long hair, I could put that on like a Barbie doll. I
could do it like dress me up for put me in the front window, dress me up for like Christmas and Halloween and stuff.
Put you in the passenger seat so I could go in the diamond lane.
Who was it? Was it David Hume, the philosopher that had himself stuffed and like?
Is that true? Did he really?
I thought he did. He was putting.
Jesus, did you read any of his stuff? That's crazy. Oh my God. I took a philosophy class. We read Hume and it was just like, wait, what?
Yeah. Anyway, the hippocampus is the one that helps us lay down our memory tracks.
Okay.
So the amygdala has a lot to do with like emotions and fear.
Yeah.
And then it transfers all that over to the hippocampus, which helps us lay down the memories.
That seahorse just lays it all down.
Right. And what they say is that the fact that very remote memory tends to be preserved after medial temporal lobe damage indicates that these structures are not the ultimate repository of long-term memory. So
Bits and
people
pieces are stored everywhere.
exactly,
Wow.
exactly,
Wow.
exactly.
Well, that's how a computer is too. On a hard drive, it accesses different from different places, and occasionally it'll index it so it knows where things
Yeah,
are. But wow,
it
that's
was
so weird.
reminding me of remember in Harry Potter the Horcrux, where like parts of
Which one was that?
uh
9, 17? Which one was it?
I don't know. It
I
was where
faded out at one point. Did you go all the way?
no, I didn't read them. I just saw the movies,
But
but
did you go all the way with the movies?
I did because Mary's really into them. Mary's
Really?
really
I
into
don't
them.
think I
Yeah,
ever made it past like 3.
you really.
I
Yeah.
can't. I don't think so. I can't remember. But you know what? Now I know. Who knows? Maybe I did watch them all.
What was it? Voldemort, remember, he had taken his soul or whatever it was, and he put it in different things, and they were called Horcruxes, different objects
Oh,
to kind of
okay.
hide himself. But that's kind of
Okay.
like memory is. A memory is
Yeah.
kind of placed in different parts of the brain.
God, that makes it even more amazing, doesn't it?
Right.
It's just incredible.
And so what they say is like older adults who exhibit memory loss symptoms are having difficulty encoding and consolidating new memories, while memories that were acquired and consolidated long ago
Right.
are easy to retrieve.
Wow.
So that's like when someone will, like, you'll have a grandparent or a parent or someone who can remember something that happened back in 1945, but can't remember something that happened last week, for example.
Right. Those neural pathways are deep. They run
Right.
deep and strong.
And it's usually it's damage, like for when you get Alzheimer's, the first thing Alzheimer's attacks is going to be some of those structures in the hippocampus.
Wow.
And that's what allows you to lay down those new memories. So that's what, when it starts attacking that, then what they can pull out are all those long-term memories.
Wow.
But they can't pull out those recent memories. And so now that we have a basic understanding of memory, yes. I mean, this was like 6 weeks trying to put 6 weeks of reading into like 20 minutes. But let's move on to Joshua Foer's book, Moonwalking with Einstein.
Okay.
And we'll take a look at some of the ways that we can help us remember things.
Okay. Love that.
And Foer says that the principle underlying all memory techniques is that our brains don't remember all types of information equally well, which is what we were just talking about.
Right.
It's stored in different parts.
Yeah. And some things we deem more important than others, and the emotions attached to them, and
right,
etc. Yes.
Right. That's all.
See, I've been listening.
That's all. I'll call you tomorrow. Well,
it'll be gone tomorrow. It'll be gone.
It's a fascinating, but he talks to Ed Cook, who's a grandmaster memory champion from England, and Cook says
boring. Let me tell you something.
I didn't want to bring it up to you because I know at one point they said for the memory championship, it seems like a lot of crossover between the Renaissance Festival and chess tournament.
God. Oh, there's nothing worse than those people, Hey, you want to give me something to remember? No. Can we just have dinner?
Yeah.
You didn't say that yesterday at 3:01 p.m. Ah!
Yeah.
Cook, shut it.
Yeah.
Just shut it.
People don't want to remember those things.
Yeah.
But he says the general idea with most memory techniques is to change whatever boring thing is being inputted into your memory into something that is so colorful, so exciting, and so different from anything you've ever seen before that you can't possibly forget it.
Ah, okay.
So again, it's like what we're trying to do is, usually we weed out, and we've talked about this in other episodes before, I think in the fear episode maybe, where we weed out a lot of the stuff that we encounter. We try not to pay attention to it. And so what we're trying to do with memory is we're trying to take those things, something that we want to remember, we want to make it visually in our mind's eye, visually
memorable.
Yeah. And he says that, Ed Cook says that our memories weren't built for the modern world. So again, if we go back to like Lyndon was talking about, like through evolution.
How does Cook know that? I mean,
he's a
just
memory.
good at
He's a
remembering
grandmaster.
stuff.
He's a grandmaster. He's a grandmaster.
Grandmaster. How do you become a grandmaster? You beat a master, and it's like chess. Okay.
So, but the idea, again, going back to what Lyndon talked about, is our brains have been, just through evolution, things have been pieced on top of
right.
It. So
it's like having a house and putting new additions all the time, and the house is kind of fakakta.
Right. Yeah. And what our brains were originally, and we've talked about this with sugar and diabetes, is like at one time that was something that was very successful for us, helped us to, to survive as a species. And now maybe it doesn't work anymore. It's maladaptive now.
Right.
But the idea is that our memories really came up, back when we were hunters and gatherers, millions of years ago, up until a few tens of thousands of years ago. We were just trying to remember where food was. For example.
Yeah, we weren't remembering random numbers.
Right.
Or poems, or whatever they had to remember.
Where the example,
it's over to the tree, turn left. You'll see it. It's a big bush of berries. They taste delicious.
And that's what our brains were evolved to do. And that's what they say is our brains came up to, they're very good about places. Our brains are very good about remembering locations of like where we need to go, for example. They weren't meant, in the example they give, which is just what you were saying, they weren't meant to like memorize a bunch of names at a cocktail party or something.
Right. That's unconnected to a visual space that you can put it in. Right. That's why like a mnemonic device is always like you walk through a house.
Right.
And you remember certain things by, I've heard that before, where it's like,
right. And we'll go into that. We'll give an example of that here coming up.
Okay, great.
And what he says is, Foer says, there was a time when most of our culture was passed for, up until about the last, few hundred years, even, or thousands of years, most of our culture was passed orally, just from people remembering things.
There was. Okay, I'm on fire.
Yeah, you really are. An interesting thing they talk about when people read Homer's Odyssey, for example, there's a lot of repetition in it, and people are always like, why is he repeating it? Why is it? Well, it's because it was meant to, those are mnemonic devices that are meant to help whoever was telling that story.
The storyteller. Yes.
Right.
To remember the story.
Right.
The aspects of the story to help you remember the story.
Right.
This is what happens in Kansas, where we're from. A lot of yarns, a lot of storytelling happened around both of our families.
Right.
And it's how you tell the story that communicates how you're doing, and the story itself reminds you of the next part of the story.
Right, exactly. And I'm always fascinated by, and this is something they always talk about too, with long-term memory. Long-term memory sometimes will do its misattribution. So you may remember something that thinking that you did it, and it's really something that you heard it and you're remembering. So somebody else did it and you're hearing it and you're remembering as your own.
That's which like is sometimes me in, wireless electricity. It turns out it was Tesla.
For years I thought that was you. You were so convincing.
Me too. It wasn't a lie. I really thought it was me, but it was Tesla.
And then what they say, Foer says, in the 15th century, Gutenberg came along and had an external memory system, which was print, for example.
Right. Okay.
And from then, it became like it was less important to have a good memory.
Right.
Because
so idiots like me survived. That's why people like me are around.
Well, I think, we talk about it now we have Google, we have computers, nobody remembers anything. They all have this stored on their hard drive. Nobody thinks about it. They were saying the same thing about like printing back in the 15th century,
Well, yeah. And that was more of a leap technologically speaking.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge, huge leap. But my response to people like that is, so what? Why do I need to remember my times tables if I have a calculator?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. This is what the book talks about. And it's not saying it's right or wrong or anything like, but there was a time when learning was all about memorization.
Yeah, like spelling. Right. And then spell check came along and it's over.
Or remember they talk about people learning poems. Like you'd you'd memorize a poem and then you'd have to recite the poem.
Right.
And the idea was in the classical education, that memorization was part of, it was a sign of an ordered mind, for example, that you could train your mind to remember these things.
Right.
And so when you learn something new, you would memorize it and you would mull it over until it became part of you.
Right.
So I could almost see where, I don't know, I think about, I used to really be into trivia. Like when I was in college, I would read all kinds of books and encyclopedias just to have a bunch of facts and everything.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then I just, because it would help me create other things by having all that information there. But now I don't need it. I don't need to memorize that.
No,
you don't.
I mean? You just type it into the thing. Yeah. Right. And that's why with the chips, it's going to be even more intense because you'll be able to Google in your brain.
Yeah. But I wonder at that point, like with AI, and we'll have to do one on AI itself, because I go back and forth. I completely understand AI, but it's also like, what's the creativity at that point when a human's not making it? There's no attribution to it.
Right. But it's too late. We've done it. It's like the internet. Facebook serves no purpose, but we got it.
Right.
And now we all get crap for news.
I know. And also, I used to really be into watching Jeopardy, for example, but now I'm just like, well, who cares? And like anybody can, right? Yeah. Anybody could do that.
Yeah.
So what they say is in today's data, all this like really data saturated environment that we live in today,
right?
What we need to do is we need to take things that we're not good at remembering, which is like names and numbers and things like that. Right. And then we need to like somehow transform them into things that we are good at remembering, which are places and images.
Got it.
And some of the other things that they mentioned that we're naturally good at, there's something called the two alternative picture recognition. And that is, as humans, we're very good at recognizing something that we've seen before compared to something we haven't seen before.
Okay, makes sense.
So, but I mean, if you see someone at a party who you've met before compared to someone you haven't met before, something in your mind will probably tell you, I've seen that person before.
Yes. Unless you live in Los Angeles and then that person just happened to be on TV and you think you know them.
But you've seen them before.
You've seen them before, but they don't know who you are.
Right.
He was the pizza guy on Friends episode,
I was thinking about, for Mary and I, we watch a lot of riff tracks on the weekends, which is, we're the guys from Mystery Science Theater. And we've watched so many of them that we can't really remember which ones we watched before, just from the title. But as soon as we bring it up and we'll start watching it, with almost immediately, we'll be like, we've seen this one before.
Yes.
And that's what the two alternative picture recognition is. It's like we're very good as humans at recognizing something we've seen before compared to something we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
The other thing we're good at is chunking, and that's where we take lots
Are you sure this is appropriate? Because I know what chunking is, and oh God,
it might be a different type of chunking, I think.
Oh, okay.
But that's where we can take like long strings of information, and then we kind of like bind them together into like fewer, bigger chunks of information that we can remember, such as our phone numbers.
Yes, My chunking involves two guys' butts getting close to each other, and they're both pooing. Anyway, I'll put the rest of it in the notes.
Yeah, remind me before we do our TED Talk. Let me run that by me. I want to make certain that we're on the same page before you start talking.
Okay, so you get two guys.
What does this have to do with memory?
I don't know, but he wants me to describe chunking.
So Ed Cook says that even an average memory is very powerful if we use it in the right way. And again, it's like we have to somehow make whatever we're trying to remember more memorable. And that's where we come up with the memory palace technique, which is what you were talking about.
Yes.
It's also called the journey method or the method of loci, meaning that you're going to imagine, you're going to find someplace, you're going to create a building or someplace. It doesn't have to be a building, but it could be like a park or something that you're walking through. And then you're going to place memorable things, images that will help you memorize something or remember something in these different locations.
Yeah.
Why? Because evolutionarily, we're really good at remembering places and we're really good at remembering images. That's why we're doing it.
Right. Yeah, it works.
Yeah. And so Foer says that, legend has it that this goes back to, this technique goes back to the Greek poet Simonides in the 5th century BC. Okay. And what happened is he was at a banquet and apparently he got up and walked out of the room. I don't know, go to the bathroom or something.
Vomitorium.
Yeah, could have gotten just some chunking. Some people were chunking outside.
Yeah. Oh, those Greeks chunked constantly.
But anyway, he walked outside, and immediately after he walked outside, the roof collapsed and killed everybody in there at the banquet.
Jesus.
And so Simonides apparently was able to think in his mind where everybody was seated, and then go and lead people's family members to those different locations.
Oh, Simonides.
So
what?
So that's where he was. Legend has it.
I know where your dad is. You want to see him?
Yeah.
He's over here.
Well, I think it was to recover the bodies. He was trying to help the people that come.
Yeah. I got you.
He's waving at you. He's waving at you.
Oh, he was sitting right next to me. He had his mistress with. Oh, well.
And then Cicero, the Roman philosopher, also wrote a book one time talking about this type of method to help people remember when they're giving a speech, for example. Mm-hmm. And then what's interesting, Foer says the word topic in English actually comes from the Greek word topos, which means place.
Huh.
And then he says also, if you think about when we say things like when we're giving a speech or talking, we say in the first place. That's another one of these like remnants of how this classical education used to tell people how to remember things.
It's interesting
as well.
Yeah.
So again, what Cook says is we're really good also about remembering things that are exceptionally base, dishonorable, extraordinary, great, unbelievable, or laughable.
Okay, Cook, that's no big. I mean, come on, that's pretty obvious,
right? But that's what we want.
We're good at remembering stuff that's interesting. Okay, right? Yeah, I get it, Cook.
But that's what you need to keep in mind when you're creating your memory palace, when you're creating this, and when you're filling it full of these images that you want to help you remember. Is he says we're really good also about jokes and about sex. So if you can make your images that you're trying to...
in the first room, I'd have two guys chunking, and then on each of their backs, I would be the first two topics of my speech.
Right. Right. Just make certain that you remember what it was, that you don't don't get mixed up and start talking about what your images are as opposed to the actual topic.
Right. Yeah, then things go south.
So to give an example, if we were trying to remember a shopping list of noodle salad, coffee filters, milk, and ramen noodles, for example, and you can as you're listening, you can try to create your own memory palace. But we're the noodle salad, coffee filters, milk, and ramen noodles. So the first thing I would do is I would try to imagine some place that I know well. A place, a physical place I know well, or create it in my mind. So my house I know very well because I never go out anymore.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to fill it with unusual images
Okay.
to help me remember noodle salad, coffee filters, milk, and
So
ramen
let's say the
noodles.
two guys chunking have noodle salad on their back.
Right.
And that's in the foyer. Right when you come in the front door, they're sitting there.
Perfect.
They thought it was their place.
But that's something that's unusual that you usually wouldn't see that. I mean, mine,
Right.
which I was thinking of, was a big baby pool of full of noodle salad out on my driveway. But to make that stand out, I'm going to have Cher and Taylor Swift wrestling with each other out there.
Wait a second. Because now you're making it sexual. Because
help me
chunking isn't
remember.
Sexual. Chunking is very...
Really?
No, it's not. It's math and science. It's
just
important.
just two friends hanging out.
Yeah.
Okay, so there I have Cher and Taylor Swift in a baby pool in my driveway full of noodle salad, having a noodle salad fight. And then I go up, I start walking towards my front door. And when I get towards my front door, I see Patrick Mahomes play, like, juggling coffee filters, like silk scarves. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of unusual to me.
Very.
Then I come into my living room and I see there's a cow on my coffee table in my living room with a milkmaid milking the cow. And that's not a sexual one. That's just something to stick out.
Yeah.
And then I keep walking and I go into my dining room, and my dining room suddenly has been turned into a Chinese noodle shop.
No.
And there's somebody in there. There's people slurping up noodles in there. So now, to use the memory palace method, when I want to remember my shopping list, I'll go first. I'll imagine myself walking up to my house. The first thing I see is a baby pool full of noodle salad and Cher and Taylor Swift having a noodle salad fight there.
Mm-hmm. And you'll stop for a minute and smile and think about that.
I'll be noodle salad. And then I'll imagine myself walking on up to my front door, and there's Patrick Mahomes juggling coffee filters like silk scarves.
And behind him, we've got two guys chunking, but that's not pertinent to this memory.
I'll remember that you needed to remember something. And that's what I see, because now I can't help but see those guys chunking in my walkway. And I'll be like, I need to call Lehr. He's forgot something. Lehr forgot something. Those two guys remind me. So then I remember coffee filters. Patrick Mahomes is... And then I walk into my living room. There's that cow on my dining room table, or on my coffee table, being milked. And I remember milk. And then I keep walking, and I see myself go into my dining room with that now somebody is
Chinese restaurant.
Ramen noodles. And that's how I remember the ramen.
Boom! Or you've got written it all down. You could have written it all down in your phone.
Exactly. But that's just to give you an idea of the memory palace method in a nutshell, of how the memory palace method works to remember things. So, all right, John.
Wow.
Well, I think we've reached the end. One of the other things, just real quick, there was an article I read from, it was called Science Norway website. And it was called This Is Why We Forget Names by Nina Christensen. And she says one of the reasons we forget people's names is that names are random. They don't really convey information about the person. And she says we need, to remember a name, you need it to stand out. And we usually don't remember neutral people that don't really stand out for it.
Well, that's why rappers change their names to LL Cool J. You're going to remember that.
Right. Well, with just James whoever,
Yeah.
Or
Jay-Z.
So I was thinking, at parties, to make it easier on the person who you're being introduced to, try to stand out. Try to stand out a little. Try to make yourself a little more unique.
I gotcha. Shit for brains. Like we said at the beginning.
Yeah, or something, just go up and throw a drink in their face. It's like, I'm John.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or stab them.
Yeah.
Just
go.
What was the name of the guy who stabbed you? John. See? If you remember, forget that.
a business meeting, a business lunch, and go up and just kiss the producer right on or the executive right on the lips. I'm John. You won't forget that.
And like my dog Billy, slip your tongue in there. Billy used to slip her tongue in there. She was like, what, Billy? Jesus.
All right, John.
All right. Well, this has been wonderful. This is, I love this. And thank you so much, Professor. This is Human Number 2, John Lehr signing off.
And this is Human Number 1, John McCray. Thanks for listening, everybody. Again, check it out if you get a chance. It's a great book. Moonwalking with Einstein by Joshua Foer. Great read, and it's just fascinating with what's going on up inside this big pumpkin of ours.
Crazy.
And then also, I just want to say, Christmas is coming up. Hanukkah's coming up. Don't forget to check out Watson & Company's socks. Also,
That's right.
Puppies Not Piranhas friendship bracelets.
That's
on
right.
Etsy. And the Two Humans Cave Shop has a lot of interesting stuff there for listeners.
We've got mugs, we've got shirts, we've got everything.
All right. I love you guys. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. And thank you to my first cousin, once removed, Rob, for bringing this up in conversation. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Rob.
And we'll talk to you guys later. Love you guys. Happy holidays, everybody. Bye.
Bye.